Hello, welcome to Consequential Leadership. This is a platform where we are discussing leadership of consequential effect on our environment for good, for upliftment, for progress, and for improvement. Today, we are going to be looking at an Old Testament character in the Old Testament book of 1 Samuel, chapter 25, and that character is interestingly a lady called Abigail. Abigail is a classic expression of the concept of consequential leadership, in which we talk about individuals stepping up to the occasion and taking actions that bring about desirable outcomes, not just for the actor, but the environment as well. And this story is one that is of interest to us in the discussion of consequential leadership. We're told during one of the periods of David's difficulties, having run from Saul, from one cave to another cave, from one hiding place to another hiding place, it turned out that David was in an environment in the vicinity where Nabal had his servants taking care of their sheep, and David's men, including himself, had protected Nabal's men for a period of time that the Bible did not specify, but it had to be sufficient enough, because when the story breaks forth in 1 Samuel chapter 25, we hear one of the servants actually testifying that David was a wall of security. David and his men were a wall of security around them as they took care of their sheep, so that there was no harm done to any of them, neither was there any theft at all. It turned out that during the time of sharing sheep, which is a time of festivity, for people who have had, it's like if you were a stock market investor, there was a turnaround, there was mighty move in the market, so there was great profit to you. In the farming contest, they were sharing sheep, so it's a time of great feasting. Nabal was having feast, and David and his men, knowing that they were fugitives to Saul and they were hiding from place to place, survived, under different circumstances. By this point in time, David has sent some of his men to ask Nabal for some provision, which was a befitting request because of what David had done for his men. Unfortunately, we are told that Nabal did not just reject David's request, but he insulted David as well. Hearing that, David decided that he was going to revenge. In fact, he took an oath that nobody would have been left alive by morning time in Nabal's household. What a response that was. One day we'll talk about what would cause someone like David to react in the way he did. You can understand the frustration, the tension, that David is suffering as a result of Saul's hatred, and the entire national system of the kingdom is fixed on hunting down David. So you can understand those emotions that David, was feeling. And now he is reacting in such a disastrous way as a result of this unfortunate and inappropriate response of Nabal to David, as though David was asking for free food. Nabal talk about, servants breaking away from their master, and who did David think he was to even be asking for anything from him? That was so disgraceful and so provocative to David. And this is how David was responding. Interestingly, while that was going on, while David was preparing his men for this revenge, one of the servants, who most likely must have heard the response of Nabal, ran to Abigail and told Abigail, listen, David's men were a wall of security around us while we took care of our master's sheep, and he sent here for food, but the way our boss responded is totally inappropriate. I suspect that David is not going to take it kindly, so you better do something at this point. Immediately, Abigail sprung into action. Immediately, she decided to seize the moment, not knowing how fast David would have been, as far as his coming to do whatever he wanted to do, or how long it would have taken. All of that factor in, and Abigail sprung immediately to action. The second thing that is important to show here as an appreciation of Abigail's consequential leadership is that she's now taking action in total contravention to the traditional setting of family life, because Abigail was a wife, and as a wife, it was not in her place to act on behalf of the family, especially when her husband was alive and right there where these events were taking place. It wasn't her role, it was not her responsibility, and she does this without consulting her husband. This is a very critical point to remember, because of these traditional restrictions that could have immobilized Abigail and made her, redundant to the response that are required to avert a looming disaster. That is a key factor in the Abigail story that I want us to consider here discussing leadership. So we recognize Abigail's timely response here. The next thing she does is that in response to her immediate reaction to the news that the servant has given her was the mobilization of full items that David had requested. She does all of that. She mounted them on some of their donkeys, again, without telling her husband. Another traditional violation, because given her gender, it wasn't her right to make decision of that importance, of that magnitude, without reference to her husband. Knowing that the husband obviously was not even going to pay attention to what she needed to do, which was of extreme significance, right, to the well-being of the family, she nonetheless decided that she was going to lay aside traditional gender limitation. Another key factor in Abigail's example of consequential leadership. Now, she has all the things packed. She got some of her servants on, and right away, she's on her way to David. And in the process, meets David in the field on the highway, and the way she responds brings the second aspect of the intelligence of this woman in her leadership role in the response to the crisis. When she meets David, beginning from verse 22, 1 Samuel chapter 25, the Bible says that she pays homage to David. That was a recognition of the hand of God on David's life. What is she doing by that? Not only is she honoring David, but she is catering to David's self-esteem. That was very key in her objective of persuading David from acting on the husband's rash response. Not only did she pay homage to David, but another key factor here is that Abigail took full responsibility of her husband's mistake. She didn't go try to make herself feel good, to blame the husband and to show herself as an intelligent one, because the Bible has clearly said in the beginning of 1 Samuel chapter 25 that she was not just an intelligent woman, but she was a very beautiful one as well. She didn't factor any of those in her response to David. She pays homage to the man of God, and then she takes full responsibility. She says that this guilt was her guilt. She didn't say it was my husband's guilt, it was some people's guilt, or I wasn't there, I didn't even know, I would have done better. I know. All of that would have painted her as a good person in the story, but that wasn't her objective. She didn't go to project herself. She went to avert disaster for her family. You see, leadership is not a competition for credit. Leadership is taking advantage of moments to act in ways that will bring about desirable outcome. And Abigail is demonstrating that very clearly. The third thing she does as she meets David is that she doesn't say to David, I'm here to help you make the right decision. You're supposed to know that you're a man of God. A man of God doesn't think like that. You want to. She doesn't do any of that. In fact, what she says, is that God was restraining David from bloodshed. She didn't say, I'm trying to avert trouble. I'm trying to make a right decision for you. I'm trying to make you think straight, which is what some of us would have wanted to do, because that way it puts the spotlight on us. It puts us in the limelight. It makes us feel that we are the important factor in the story. But Abigail is not interested in any of that. She says it was the Lord restraining David from bloodshed. So she wasn't interested in the credit. The fourth thing she does is that she wishes downfall for all of David's enemy. Again, this is in line with the first thing she does by paying homage to David. She's still catering to David's self-esteem. She's recognizing David as a man upon whose life was the hand of the Lord. So she wishes David's enemy downfall in verse 26. Then she prophesies in verse 29 that David's household, David's dynasty will be established by the Lord forever. What a wonderful way to gain David's attention. And because of that, she'll go further to say that shedding blood in response to Nabal's foolish response will be a stain in David's track record, will be a stain on David's life. And because the Lord is going to establish him, he should refrain from shedding blood. Because eventually, when the Lord should have established David, it will be a point of grief, right? And a reference to a poor judgment as David tried to respond to God in the time of great challenges. Then lastly, she requests David to remember her when the Lord shall have eventually established David on the throne. What an amazing response. What an amazing leadership that this lady, an unlikely one at that for that culture and for that time, to have responded. But that is the issue of consequential leadership. You don't have to be the likely person. You don't have to be the person that is necessarily expected to act in a certain way as far as expectation, as far as honor, as far as, the status quo is concerned. When you realize that something needs to be done and you take the initiative to do it that bring about desirable outcome, that's leadership. And that brings a consequence of goodwill, not just for you, but the space in which you function. So how does David respond in all of this? David acknowledged Abigail's wisdom. All right, in verses 32 to 34 of 1 Samuel chapter 25. David credits his change of mind to Abigail's intelligence. You see, Abigail wasn't recognizing herself when she was doing this, yet David's reaction to her demonstrates his recognition of the fact that it was Abigail's wisdom, her intelligence, that had averted this disaster that was coming on, that was going to eventually be a stain on David's life. And then David receives Abigail's gift. What a powerful demonstration of leadership that this lady, a very unlikely character at that, especially in the culture in which she lived, would do such a thing, not just to preserve bloodshed from her household, but to also keep David free from a disastrous experience. That is what consequential leadership is. When this lady realized that trouble was coming and something needed to be done, knowing that she was the person who heard it, it automatically obligated her to respond. She acted in time. Even though she was limited by her gender to act in the way she did, but leadership compelled her to act nonetheless. She finds David and she throws the spotlight on David, pays homage to him, takes responsibility for the wrong that was going on, and says to David it was the Lord intervening and not her at all. Wishes well for David and asks for David's forgiveness and for David to accept her gift. David, in turn, recognizes her wisdom and intelligence and accepts her gift. And at that point, trouble was averted. David's character was preserved from bloodstain, and everything went well going forward. I hope that Abigail, as unlikely as she is in the story of leadership, especially for the culture in which she functions, can inform us in the 21st century as to how to act in these times of complex dynamics where we find ourselves in different spheres of life. Before you go, I'd encourage you to kindly like the channel and share it as well. Subscribe to it, and I appreciate if you can comment also so that we can continue improving on the content that's uploaded here. Until I see you again, my name is Pastor G. Thomas Dowie. God bless you.